Hello, everybody. We see everybody's faces are connecting to audio. I see Ms. Munn. Hi. Morgan Lieberman, what's up? Nice to see some. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
All right. So everyone that's just jumping into the call, you've got me, Matthew, Joe, Andrea, Hannah, as well. We're gonna give it another minute or two just to let everyone's kind of video connect and audio connect. You guys are all on mute for right now. We're gonna unmute you in a bit when we break into some breakout rooms. But can everyone hear me okay? Just a thumbs up, yeah, great, okay, cool. And actually, this is 100 of us that are in the room. So thank you guys for jumping on the call early and getting in here. And in the future, we'll find a way to sort of stream this to YouTube or something so that people that couldn't get in the room could join as well. Just some quick like Zoom housekeeping notes. If you're unfamiliar with it, at the upper right-hand corner, if you're on your computer, you should have like a speaker view versus gallery view. I'm in gallery view right now. It's kind of fun. You can see everybody's faces. But when we're interviewing Hannah, Andrea, Joe, you might want to pop into speaker view, and that way you'll see their lovely faces a little bit bigger. There's a chat window down on the bottom. If you guys want to chat, it's open. And the conversation, Brent, is being recorded. Thank you for that. And we just chatted with Andrea, Joe, and Hannah, and they're all cool with us sharing that afterwards. So we will make that available for people. So I guess it's a minute before noon, but we're all here. So I guess we'll just dive right down. Sound check's good. Thank you guys for being here. My name is Matthew Young. For anybody that doesn't know me, I'm a photographer, director. I'm based here in Los Angeles. I'm also the founder of Art of Freelance. Art of Freelance is primarily it's a 10-week online workshop. We've been running it for like 4 years now. This will be the 10th time coming up that we're just launching right now. It's primarily designed to help creative freelancers sort of create personal work or work on their business, but do it in small groups with accountability and structure and feedback. But during this crisis, we've sort of been trying to aggregate information and resources and find a way to, share some of that with the community as well. And that's why we're on this call today. We asked everybody to ask a question to register for the call here today, and we read through them all yesterday. And I think first I just kind of wanted to commiserate with the sort of level of existential angst that's out there in the world right now. I feel very much in the same place. I'm in the camp of having 100% of my jobs evaporate overnight. I was calling a Lyft on my way to Cape Town for 2 weeks when I got the call that like, nope, you're not doing this job, and all the other jobs are gone too. So I know that a lot of us are in the same boat with that, and it's pretty scary, and we're just trying to figure out how to move forward. The second thing is that the number one question on that document yesterday by a long shot was sort of like what short-term resources are available for freelancers, whether that's unemployment or the federal stimulus, low interest loans. So we've created a resources blog on the Art of Freelance website where we've put down sort of an aggregation of everything that we've been able to find. A lot of people have questions about the federal stimulus bill that just passed yesterday through Congress. There is a provision that covers freelancers, yay, for unemployment insurance that weren't covered before. It's a little bit unclear when or how people are going to be able to apply for that. But we'll continue to update that blog post with that information as we get it. There's information there about the FEMA SBA loans that are available, low interest loans for small businesses, which people have been applying for. There's information about state resources that you might be eligible for now. If you were paid on a W-2, like through a payroll company or something, even if you're usually paid by a 1099, you might be eligible for some unemployment benefits now. There's also information about the suspension of student loans that they're talking about how to call your credit card company and ask for extensions. So we hope that that blog post is helpful, and instead of focusing on that too much in this conversation, we just put all that information there. So again, artofreelance.com, go to blog, it's resources, it's the first thing you see there, and we hope that that is helpful. And then we're gonna kind of get into some of the more medium-term and long-term thornier issues in these conversations. Is that cool for everyone? All right, sweet. So a couple other quick points, and then we're excited to start these conversations with our guests here. I just want to make a few quick points. One is that we're here to talk about freelancing and our economic situation and all of those really serious and thorny issues. And before we do, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that you know, a lot of us have a lot of existential, heavy things going on, but there are also people, you know, if you think about people that are homeless, people that are undocumented and lost their jobs, that have it even harder than we do, frontline medical workers that are putting themselves or families at risk. So I just want to take a second for all of us to acknowledge that, so that we can then just kind of move on to talk about our, you know, our particular economic issues. So I just want to acknowledge all of that. Also, I know that we all want to get back to work as soon as we can, and that these are scary times for freelancers, but I also just want to acknowledge that this is a serious global pandemic and that people are dying and that the worst is yet to come, and then it's starting to hit really close to home for people as family members become infected with this, and that we might be talking in hypotheticals about what it might look like when we get back to work and when that might happen. And we just want to say that in everything we consider professionally, we also kind of want to put public health first and acknowledge that. And then also for all of us speaking today, we just want to acknowledge that it's a changing situation and that everything we're going to say is our opinions and it's based on the information we have today, and it might change. And I just want to give Joe, Hannah, Andrea the sort of freedom to speak with where you are right now and not need to couch everything in this might change tomorrow, because we know that it can. And then last, I just want to remind everyone that the four of us are all in the photo industry, but we know that there's a lot of people on this call that are in the photo industry. We also know there's people on this call that aren't in the photo industry. So we're going to do our best to sort of speak a little bit more holistically about freelancers in general when we can from our personal experience. So this call is going to be pretty packed. In 1 hour, we're going to have these interviews for the next 30 minutes, and then we're going to be breaking out into smaller groups of 5 and get a chance to share with each other for about 20 minutes, so 4 minutes per person. So that'll give us all a chance to just kind of share with each other. And then after that, we can come back into this room, and some of us will stick around if we want to do some more general Q&A. If there's any questions we didn't get to, if people want to hang out in this room afterwards, that's on offer as well. So I think that that's all the housekeeping notes, and we can dive right in. 5-minute introduction, right in 5 minutes. All right. So first, I'd like to introduce Andrea. Andrea Stern is a photographer's artist rep at Stern Reps. She's got and had for a very long time this very keen eye for talent, but she's also had a very sort of thoughtful perspective on the photography industry. And in the past couple of years, she has very generously started to share that on Instagram at Ask Stern Reps. And if you're not following at Ask Stern Reps on Instagram and you're a photographer, you really are missing out. She has like very great content thoughts about the industry, about marketing, about sort of trends in the industry. And she has been very generous since this crisis started, also about continuing to share those thoughts. So Andrea.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? I mean, yeah.
So we were talking 2 days ago. Time has taken on a real weird
I know.
way. I think that was 2 mornings ago we were talking. It feels like 3 lifetimes ago. And you were saying that you have seen most of your photographers' photo jobs either postpone or cancel, except for a few in studio product assignments. I also know that you've been calling a lot of art buyers and producers at different ad agencies and sort of taking their temperature. And so I guess like the burning question that everybody has is, and realizing that it's only an opinion and it's subject to a lot of unknowns, like what is your perspective on how long it's going to be until we're starting to see photo production again?
Well, that question, we can't really know. So if I had to just answer you, literally, I'd probably say maybe May. That's what people are hoping or thinking. But I just want to start. Matthew, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that makes us human. So you're a good person to allow us to all get together and talk, share. One thing I just want to start with saying is stay home. I feel really serious about that. Like social distancing right now, we must do it. Stay home. Okay, got that. Um, this time is a really big opportunity for all of us, and that's to answer your question in a deeper way. That's how I see it. The short term process of this is just know your answers, and whatever we feel today, it's going to be different tomorrow, different next week. Very quickly, I'm noticing answers disappear, move on. And personally, honestly, day to day, I feel the same way. I'm kind of up one day and I feel really motivated. The next day, I'm kind of down and heavy hearted. And so that's that. I feel we got to take temperature, as you said, where we're at now. And that is what's happening. I feel like what I'm going through, people are going through. So we should share it. We should talk about it. What is happening now, I got to say, I have had more calls for studio jobs. One of my photographers has a job next week. It's awesome, by himself.
Amazing.
Solo, right? So the temperature right now is our clients need to engage, and they're trying to figure it out. And this is our opportunity to be there, part of their team, help them figure it out. Right now, I've been calling it a flat playing field. And it's like photographers who are unexperienced the way other photographers are get to participate. And that was not always the way. Right now, there's this like big pot of stew being cooked, and everybody gets to throw in their ideas and help agencies, help clients, direct, whatever, figure out how to do it right now. It's this time we've not experienced. We all get to jump in. What are working obviously are stock images, influencers, home shoots. That's a biggie. All of this, I got to say, from what I've been getting from clients, it's not really happening yet, but they're expecting it to happen very soon.
I got a call yesterday from a client it sort of seems like it falls into two buckets. There's what content they're looking for immediately that is related to COVID-19. And do you have any pictures of nurses wearing masks and first responders and that sort of thing? And then a second bucket of them starting to think what the world looks like medium term, long term, and what some of those other content pieces might start looking like. The stock syndication thing we've been seeing as well. I always love your perspective because I feel like you don't think of a photographer necessarily as just a photographer. You think of them as like a creative problem solver. And I think that kind of applies to all freelancers of all stripes as these creative problem solvers. And the point that you were making a couple of days ago is that like, this is not going to stop the need for problems to be solved in a creative way. And there will still always be a place for creative problem solvers, assuming we stay nimble and resilient and ask the question of what problem are our clients trying to solve.
Well, right now there's more problem to solve than we've ever seen. And our clients don't know the answer, which is a really weird time. So we all have the opportunity to jump in and say, how about this? How about this? Let me help you solve this problem. There's an open door that there wasn't before.
So another question that was maybe the second most asked, third most asked in these questions was about marketing. And you think a lot about marketing. You talk a lot about marketing at Astor and Reps. The question sort of distilled down from everybody was, is it appropriate to market during this crisis? How would you market during this crisis? And how do you stay relevant and in front of your clients for when this crisis potentially is in a different phase? I don't even want to say over, but what are your thoughts about marketing right now?
The biggest part is know your audience, and how to do that is put yourself in their place. Like, what kind of marketing do you want to be receiving right now? Like if I got an email promo about go travel, I'd be like, what the hell? Who is this? They don't relate. This is somebody not really in our world right now. They want to see that we relate to them. It's the time to put out a friendly hello, how are you? Like soften up in the marketing and become even more human, warm, and just really, as I said, relate. That's my big word right now, relate.
I like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw an Instagram sponsored post of a, photographer selling a course on flash photography, and it was like a big party and someone was crowd surfing, and it just felt so wrong for the time and the tone that I almost wanted to just reach out just to, you know, flag it in a friendly way. But I think
Right.
that's a really great point that, you can still be showing up with your clients, but to do it in a way that is empathetic and understands where they're at and is looking to ask what problems they have to solve and acknowledges the time that we're in.
I actually find there's, as I was saying before on the other question, is doors are even more open right now for that. Like people are scared. Our clients, like to tell you the pulse of the community right now, that what's happening, they're afraid because they're going to get laid off, a lot of them, and they know it.
You mean people working at ad agencies and
Yeah. Yeah. Restaurants, so many clients right now aren't working.
Yeah.
They know they're going to be losing their jobs, the people who hire us. So relate to that. Not, you don't have to say that to them, but it's a little human connection, some kindness right now goes a really long way.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, that's a pretty natural transition into the next question that I had for you, which is about the longer term impacts on the industry, and your perspective on the acceleration of the trends that we've already been seeing, if this is going to kind of accelerate some of those trends.
Yes. I always get confused, or I don't know how to answer future questions because I always feel like they're really, the truth is what is already now, and our job is about today. And to be who we are today will carry over into the future. I know I should get more specific about what I'm saying. There's so much we can do right now. And honestly, we're freelancers. Most of us are freelancers, as this is all about freelancers. That is about staying in the pulse and the trend and being the now person, the today person. You don't work for one brand, you're working for many, many clients. So you have to be what is very today. So the more we think about tomorrow, where is this going? Do you want me to get more? Tell me what you want more of, because I could go off in different ways here.
Well, when we were talking a couple of days ago, I thought that you had an interesting perspective that actually gave me some comfort when you were saying that a lot of the changes you might think, a lot of the changes you think might happen because of this crisis might be the acceleration of trends that were already happening. And to me, that's somehow less existential and somehow comforting to think that the changes might just be some of the things we were already seeing and some of the challenges we were already facing. They just might happen bigger and stronger and more quickly. And I don't know, is that still, that was two lifetimes ago since it was 2 days
I
ago,
know,
but
right?
is that still your perspective on it?
Definitely. And you know how so much of our advertising was all about organic, relatable, um, you know, that's the whole look, that believable of today's world. It's going to even carry on even more because that's where our trend is going. So we have to be like that. And to look forward, I don't know, so much about what we've been going through for the past year or two with all the content and more images and less time, less budget. Yes, it probably will continue, but I want to point out, if your portfolio is where it needs to be, and that's the key of the issue right now, deal with that. If you have time off, that's where your focus needs to be, because that's going to get you the jobs. As far as marketing, yes, but mainly get your portfolio to be where it's got to be. And there's many ways to do that. That's a whole other topic.
I think that that is something that we've always like really connected about, is that's like deeply held in my personal philosophy and Art of Freelance's philosophy, is that your portfolio is your resume, and that you get the kinds of jobs, you know, when you make great work and you market it to the people that need that kind of work, you get hired for more of that kind of work. So
Exactly. And the budgets, they'll pay for you. If your portfolio is up there and worth it, they're gonna find a way to pay, you know.
So you've already answered my next question, which was what should photographers or freelancers do during this time so they're better prepared if and when we do get back to work. But I guess apart from working on their portfolio, do you have any other advice or perspective of what people can be doing, focusing on during this time? Or a different thought entirely, if you'd like to share.
No, I do. Forward thinker is something that I have noticed a lot. Some photographers think forward and some think from the past. There are many things that might be getting in your way to be the best you that you can be. Right now is a great opportunity to take the time and figure it out. There's lots of help. There's consultants and all that, and your workshops, ways to deal with it. Now is the time to sink on in, deal with it. I got a quote from a client I was talking to yesterday to feel out what's going on right now. This client said to me, I'm gonna read it from over there. She said, in quote, "Show me some cool shit, I'm gonna pass it on." She wants us to give ideas. Oh, what about this? I can home shoot with my puppy or my baby, and here's my yard. Look at this picnic table. I could do it here, this. They want our ideas. This is our opportunity, as I keep saying. And then she said, our job is to solve this for the client to keep them going. These clients are kind of frantic right now, not to lose their job and to figure out with the client, what do we do? So the more opportunity we have to throw in our ideas in the stew I was talking about before, I just love that. Show me some cool shit and I'm going to pass it on. It's so damn simple.
That's helpful. Yeah, that's helpful. All right. Thank you, Andrea. Really appreciate that perspective.
I did some homework.
Oh, yeah.
A homework list.
Connect in a personal way. List of what you can offer solo. Put together your licensable content. Research the trends. Get inspired. That's lovely.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. We appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
So I'm going to bring Joe up now. Joe Pugliese, for anyone that doesn't know him, is damn near a legend in the editorial portraiture world, I think, at this point. It's fair to say, Joe. We've been friends for a long, long time, and Joe has also been, throughout the years, really generous of spirit with the community and hosting events, and there was some pretty epic happy hours back in the day. And through this crisis, Joe, I've seen you, really doing a great job of stepping out and offering perspective and being generous with your time to join these sorts of things. So thank you for everything that you've been doing. And also I wanted to acknowledge you really quick. I've noticed in the past couple of year or so, you've done this incredible job through your Instagram of like curating and highlighting emerging artists, other photographers. And it's been really lovely to see that. So thank you for doing that as well throughout the years. So I guess my first question for you is, this came up a lot in the questions that people asked, is how to stay creative during this time, suggestions for staying creative during this time. And I guess my first question for you is, how are you handling that? How are you staying creative? And then what suggestions do you have for other freelancers about staying engaged and creative during this time?
That's a great question. I just want to throw it back to you to say thank you for everything you've done. I mean, you've built an entire world for people to access through Art of Freelance, and I'm really happy to be part of that and be in your sphere. So I think that's the underlying thing for me about doing all of these and seeing everyone's perspective is this is a community regardless of how much we might think that we're competing against each other, we're absolutely all on the same team. And these circumstances is underscoring that. And so it's really quite encouraging for me to see how you and literally everyone else in my world is stepping up to look after other people, to listen to other people, and to lend some perspective, whatever that is. We all have the same questions. To your point of staying creative, we're kind of in week, 2 now of a kind of a new reality of, since I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, Mathieu, that you and I saw each other in person, and you were heading off to that big job, and my calendar had jobs still on it. I count, our time from when jobs started getting canceled. I mean, there was obviously this reality was looming, but when jobs fell off the calendar, that was when this new reality started for me and everybody else. Being creative is a daily practice in whatever way you can find it. For me, I find it in ways not related to photography a lot. I am a hobbyist. I like doing things that just give me the creative satisfaction without a lot of stakes. I do things like I bake. That's a big part. It has always been a part of my life, and right now it's an even bigger part of my life. But that idea that we have to, there's a lot of pressure, I think, as photographers that we put on, even in the best of times, we put on ourselves. What did I do today to further my career and make it sort of valid that I am part of this world? And I think it's okay also to give yourself a break and be a little cognizant of what that feels like. And maybe we do need a breather and we need some perspective. Being creative, when things are normal, being creative is a small part of what we do. We also run businesses. We also deal with people on an emotional level, on a psychological level. And this might be time to tune in some of those things too. It's not just produce work no matter what. I think there's stages. Some people will go right into that. They'll go right into like, I need to keep the creative arm working. Some people might say, you know what, I've been creative for the last 5 years, every day of my life. One of the things that was lacking was my archive was never very organized, or my syndication didn't have the images that they need, especially now. My stock agency doesn't have the work that they need. That might not feel creative, but it's all to the greater good of being a creative professional. And also, this is a mentally taxing job, no matter what, even when you're just jamming. We've all had our ups and downs. When I'm really, really busy, I have that thing of, is there such a thing as too much? Does this feel healthy for the way I want to live? To be, back-to-back traveling, or back-to-back, you close one job, you don't really look at the pictures, you open a new job and you go shoot it, you're not really engaging. And so I think all of us are finding ways that this is forcing a lot of the things that we knew we had to do. And this is absolutely, on a global level, it's forcing so many things. But if we narrow it down to our own lives, it might force other things that will become very valuable for you to have had the time to pay attention to. So if that feels like a creative endeavor is the way to go, by all means, you should do that. But I think you should also check in with what does it feel like to take a break and think and meditate on why we do the things we do and what we're putting out in the world. And I think we, in the last couple of years, have been doing a good job as an industry to be more thoughtful with imagery, to be more responsible, to produce things with integrity. And now it's a great time to really think about that. And to Andrea's point, getting your book dialed in is a creative process. It is housekeeping and you do have to do it. But when you get into your own imagery and you're looking through shoots that you haven't looked at in a year, which is something that, happens to me when I am done with the shoot and I've delivered the deliverables, it's hard for me to get go back and dig in back into that shoot. And it's a blessing to have time to be thoughtful about that, because in this new climate, like you mentioned, certain work won't land anymore, or for a while. We've all shot many variations of everything that we show. So there might be re-edits of work you already did that might be more relevant or more positive or more inspiring in a new climate.
Yeah.
You're your own stock library. You can make this new time feel like you're paying attention, and you do get it, and you're not putting work out there that is tone deaf. And so I think that if we pay attention to that, that could be our creative outlet as well.
It does feel like there might be a pretty distinct before and after this crisis, and it's something I haven't heard somebody say before, to sort of think about your work in a before and after this crisis way, and what does your portfolio look like, in the next phases of this. I think is a interesting thought. Does all of your work stay relevant in this new climate that we hopefully start moving towards? And I appreciate what you say also, because it feels like it takes the pressure off a little bit of people feeling the need to be creative and creating constantly during this crisis. I feel like a lot of people are saying, well, you've got this time, so you better make the most of it. And I think that is very valuable. And to both your and Andrea's points, portfolio edits and archive edits and finding ways to syndicate and doing the homework is important. But to your point also, creativity as a daily practice, it doesn't necessarily need to be about creating a final product, but it can be about the process. And it's nice to sort of hear that some of that pressure can come off a little bit. We were talking the other day, also can't remember what day it was, but like another question that came up a lot for people was the idea of diversifying their offerings during this time, which I feel like dovetails a little bit with what you were just saying. We talked about photographers that are leaning more into their retouching. I've heard stories of musicians whose tours got canceled that are launching Patreons. I've heard, people that shot video that are now focusing on editing video. Do you have any thoughts about people diversifying their freelance offerings right now, or interesting stories that you've heard?
I have heard people who do have, under their umbrella, they might have a few arms. There are video artists who are great editors. There are motion graphics people who are great designers. There are designers who are great photographers, for sure. I wouldn't be personally seeking any of that out. For me, it's all hands on deck with the thing that you do. To Andrea's point, we're all trying to figure out what the way forward is, and we need problem solvers. So if I have 10,000 hours of this is what happens when you thought it was going to be sunny and it's actually raining, I want to lend that back to anyone who needs it. I think we do have to be collaborative, and I do also think that, like I said, this is a force of change, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, in itself, this is obviously a terrible thing to be happening, but if you can focus on the idea of change, which is sort of romanticized a lot, it does cause a ton of anxiety when it's forced upon you, because you're not necessarily deciding that it's time for change. But I think this is one of those times when people who might have been transitioning a little bit more towards this other thing in their life, they're going full force into that other thing in their life. It's, it's just one of those things. It's a wake up call for all of us to not waste time splitting our efforts across so many things that we can't really offer expertise in any of them. So I think, yes, if you were thinking about doing more design work, maybe it's the time to say, I am now doing more design work. A lot of times we're afraid to say those things out loud, and in this climate, that thing that, when you wake up in the morning, that thing that you want to do should be the thing that you do. There's just not a time to dabble in anything anymore. And I think it is a bit of an opportunity, like Andrea says, for a renaissance. I'm just trying, I'm trying to compartmentalize my emotions and reactions to what is actually happening. So I get up in the morning and I read all I can about what's happening. And then I stop reading what is happening for the whole rest of the day. I feel like a daily check-in of the outside news suits me really well. It's been curated and it's been digested, and I get to actually see media professionals dilute and distill what is out there. And then after that, it's my time. It's my time back to think of my own solutions and not be distracted by the fear that it causes and the anxiety that it causes, which is valid. And I think this opportunity for a renaissance of the way we all work and the way we treat each other and the way we build community and the way we build teams is something that can inspire us to come together like the way we are today and say, look, when we come out of this, we will have all connected through the worst of it, and imagine what happens when we connect through the best of it again, and it will happen.
It's beautiful. There was one more question, but we're kind of running over on time, but I just want to verify that this is true because I feel like it's very hopeful. You told me that you had worked through 9/11 and 2008. Is that true? You were
yeah, 9/11 was like early on. I barely remember. I wasn't, I wasn't sort of solidified in my career. I was transitioning out of assisting, but I felt the anxiety of the world, especially in the publishing world, which was what I was closest to. But 2008, I was more established at that point. And, that was topsy-turvy. And a lot of people started thinking about their plan B. And a lot of people went back to school. And a lot of people kind of like gave up. But I don't think those people necessarily, looking back now with some perspective, those people, it was a change agent for them. Those people really wanted to do those things. They wanted to go get an MFA. They wanted to go to, culinary school.
Yeah.
They were sort of forced to make that decision. And that's the position we're in now, that, if something is bubbling up and you really feel like, well, I'll keep doing this because it's paying the bills, but what I'd really love to do is this other thing. This might be the time to say, when we come back to some sort of normal life, I might have the opportunity to wake up in the morning and do that thing I want to do every day, because nobody would fault you for making the jump into something that truly inspires you.
It's interesting to me, Andrea was sort of speaking to the acceleration of trends in the industry that this might push forward, and it sounds like you're sort of talking about the acceleration of personal trends, people that are maybe there's a path that they might be pushing towards, and this might sort of accelerate that as well, which I think you're right, can be scary, but also kind of exciting and hopeful, and there could be some beauty in that as well. Just for time's sake, I want to thank you for being a part of this, and we're going to bring Hannah in, but thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and perspective. I think that's all, really, really great things to hear, and I need to do a better job of not reading the news at night. I'm gonna take that advice. Hannah, I'd love to bring you up. For anyone that doesn't know Hannah Soto, she is based in Chicago. She's the owner of Grey House Productions. And she actually first fell on my radar because of the incredible and really early work that she was doing around sustainability on set. And it's something that we're both pretty passionate about. And that kind of pioneering spirit, I think, is evident also in her response to this crisis as well. And she's been offering really interesting perspectives through her email list and on her blog, and being on podcasts. She was just on one with Heather Elder, which was great. So Hannah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here for my fellow panelists and everybody that took the time to join. I know there's opportunity. There's a lot of information being out there. And so thanks for taking the time to be here. Yeah.
So we talked, gosh, was that really just yesterday? I know I keep saying that, but I am in like a time warp over here. We were talking, and I felt like you had a really unique perspective about how freelancers could use this time to work on their businesses. I think that, assuming that we're going to try to stick it out and stick through this thing and see it to the other side. What is your perspective on how people can sort of motivate and what work they can do on their business?
Yes, I would absolutely echo what Joe and Andrea have already said, that it's the time to dig in and work on your business. More than just, yes, absolutely work on your portfolio, add images to syndication, that's important. But I think specifically creative freelancers often miss the part of working on the back end of their business, because we're creative and we want to be able to do what's a creative expression. We don't want to think about SOPs or workflows or automations. But now is the time to do that. And I think for two really big reasons. One is the professionals who work in those environments, the consultants, PR coaches, business coaches, they have a plethora of time right now. And most of them, in fact, are offering longer initial consultations at no cost. And so it gives us the opportunity to connect, but it also, what I found is having those conversations is the spark that lights the match that lights a larger fire. And so if I can just start that work, it will give me the energy and the motivation to do what maybe I wouldn't have the energy or motivation to do after being on set for 12 hours or freelancing in whatever my medium is. And so the opportunity to work on your business will propel you forward when this all is behind us. We don't know how long that will be, but we need to be doing work now to be ready for when it's finished, because believe me that everybody's going to want to work and hire and shoot the exact same week. It's going to be like the end of the year where we're fighting for resources of time. And so make sure that you're prepared now, that you have systems in place to be prepared.
So you sent out an email that was something we were talking about here too, which is sort of when we get to phase 2 of this crisis, or however we want to think about that, and there is the ability to get back out on set. These safer at home orders are lifted. There's going to be this tension. You said something just really poetic, I thought, that like freelancers are going to simultaneously be scared to go to work because of health reasons and also scared not to work for these financial reasons. And we're going to have this tension of, is this safe? Is this in the public's interest? But also I need to get back to work. I need to feed my family. So I guess, how are you thinking about that tension between those two poles? And then I guess maybe some of the specifics you've been thinking about for how this could be done more safely when we are into the next chapter of this crisis.
Yes, it's a great question. I think it's obvious and apparent that all leaders in this position can't predict the future. We won't be able to guarantee safety. We can take good measures. We can have sanitation in process. But I think that more than just the steps to be proactive, it's about conversations and expectations. That's so much of production, which is what we do. And it's managing the client's expectation, but managing crew's expectation as well. Because if I don't take the time to talk with my crew one-on-one and really get a feel for their pulse about where they are they taking this work because they're scared of when their next paycheck will come? And if that's true, am I serving the team as a whole by allowing that to happen? And so on one hand, I've made this offer to my crew, and I challenge other leaders to do the same, where much like we can buy a gift card from a restaurant, can't we buy future days from our crew to allow them to flatten the curve financially? We've talked about flattening the curve of this epidemic, but how do we do that for our mental health and our financial health? And business owners are the ones that take on the risk and the reward of running a business in an industry. And so I think it's our responsibility to help our crew feel safe enough to say, I have permission, this is a safe place, there is protection to say, I don't feel safe to take this. Beyond just that initial hump of fear and around finances, it will be very important for my team that once it is safe to shoot again, to talk with clients about the expectations around what happens if someone does get sick, what happens if someone shows symptoms. We can talk and have conversations around signing waivers of health, but so many people, as we're already seeing, aren't showing symptoms and they're carriers. And so just having a really honest conversation about what we have the ability to understand and prevent and what we don't.
Yeah, it's a really lovely thought of the idea of buying future days from your crew that you work with a lot and that you trust. And I think that's a really beautiful idea. And, you know, we have gone and bought some gift cards to our coffee shop that we aren't going to right now. And I love the idea of sort of doing that for crews as well, if people are in the place to be able to do that. I think that's a great thought. And I appreciate how thoughtful you're being. I mean, I think that it sounds like, you know, there are going to be a lot of unknowns, and just to acknowledge that there's going to be this tension between, is it safe to work, is it safe not to work, and really getting deep into that question. Something we talked about was getting the advice of medical professionals about what kind of personal protective equipment is going to be needed if and when we are doing shoots on the other side of the curve, but there is still, you know, the chance of resurgences and new spikes and that sort of thing, and how as an industry we can be really thoughtful about not just getting back to work right now, but how can we be safe and thoughtful about getting back to work when the time is right, because that'll be more sustainable long term for us as an industry. So I appreciate your thoughts on that, and obviously it'll be an ongoing conversation. Something else that we were talking about, and something else that came up in the questions that people were asking, was this other piece of tension, this tension between these two pieces of advice that I feel like we're getting. On the one hand, it's like you have to be an expert, you have to be a specialist, you have to be the best, the expert at what you do. But now I feel like we're getting a lot of advice or input that says diversify, have a second skill set. If you were doing portrait photography, do product photography. If you were doing yoga teaching, figure out how to do it online, build a course. If you were doing, you know, art shows in person, figure out how to become a UX designer. I don't know. But it feels like there's tension between specializing and diversifying. And what are your thoughts about that tension and how people could think about that?
Yeah, I love what Joe said earlier about that this climate in our world is going to push people to what they already wanted to do, and whether it was a subconscious desire and they hadn't realized that yet, or fear was holding them back, it's going to push people to do what they ultimately want to do. I also think that there's the opportunity to pivot under pressure is the phrase that I've been using in calls all week. And I think that we have an opportunity to redefine how our industry works, whether that's production or photography or working with textiles or yoga. And so how do you solve a problem for your clients, for your audience, that they don't even realize they have yet? I think we're working under a much faster timeline now, where probably everybody realizes what the problem is, but people are too overwhelmed to even think of the solution. So being able to pioneer not only how do we shoot during this pandemic once stay at home, shelter at home is lifted, but how does that affect what production looks like in 2021? To not just think about how do we get through this emergency, but how do we use that to push us ahead? And so giving ourselves space to have those conversations, to do the deep thinking, but also to stay in conversation with people that are entrepreneurial and creative and don't just sit in the fear, but use that pressure to push forward. It might have been with you, Matthew, that I was sharing that during the Spanish flu, that Philadelphia didn't have any type of a septic system. And that was something that they didn't even realize that solution or that creation was available, but they pivoted under pressure and it changed an industry at large. And so I'm very curious to see specifically in the digital workspace, how that will change our workforce.
Recently, I was asked, I do a lot of temp repping, and this person came to me and their image on Instagram was used by the client with no permission.
No.
And I wanted to really warn photographers right now, because of the heightened Instagram usage happening and needed. Clients may not know that photographers own the copyright. They cannot just use your image for free and not with your permission. So be very aware of that.
Thanks.
PSA, we appreciate that.
Yep.
That's good. That's good.
So we saw a question just come in on the chat. Can we talk about keeping rates where they're at can we talk about keeping rates where they are at large as a community and not try to cut rates? This is something that came up on Andrea, our conversation in the time warp of 2 lifetimes ago. And sort of there will be obvious downward pressure on the industry, maybe because of COVID-19, maybe because of the impending global recession that seems to be upon us. And yeah, I mean, I think that it's something that we're going to face as clients. And to your point earlier about the acceleration of a trend that was already happening of clients asking for more with less. What does anyone have any thoughts about good strategies for keeping rates where they are, or what that looks like?
I can jump in there. Being a producer that writes estimates and often is the forefront of the person that is setting those expectations with clients. I would say if everybody could mute their lines, though, we're getting a little bit of background noise, that would be great. So I think that it will be really important for producers, photographers, directors to come into alignment that rates should not change. Just because our clients, you know, if we were going to a restaurant and we wanted to go get lobster and steak, we couldn't say, well, I only have so much money. Can you charge me the price of a cheeseburger? Well, if you only could afford a cheeseburger, you should go buy a cheeseburger. And so there will be some managing of expectations. I do think that we can absolutely get scrappy. We can get savvy. We can, again, pivot under pressure. We can come up with new solutions, but that changing cruise rates is the easy way out. And I'm going to challenge everybody not to do that.
I appreciate that challenge right there. I think that, yeah, I mean, that especially with cruise rates, I mean, there's literally no reason why, and in fact, we've been working hard to try to get cruise rates up. I feel like they didn't change a lot from 2010 to 2020. And it was like, this is a new decade, we got new rates all of a sudden, like digital texts get, you know, are $650, not $500, and you don't pay photo assistants $300, you know, if you can just, so to certainly not let this be an opportunity to sort of put downward pressure on people whose very livelihoods depend on getting those rates up is something that we should try to band together on.
I might have an idea for you guys. If and I'm sorry I didn't get the video on. This is Scott. I'm in Colorado.
Hey, Scott.
I'm a pro photographer and I shoot in the ski industry, outdoor industry. I also do avalanche rescue dogs around the country. That's what I'm really known for. Enough of the promotion bullshit. I was an enterprise software rep for the largest companies on the planet. So let me share, and I did with the two ladies I was in the chat room with, and it's all around pricing. If you pull back on your pricing now, that client is going to remember that. When this is all said and done, they're going to remember that. And they're hiring quality of what you do, and that's it. And then the power, I was talking to the two ladies, was the power of silence is deafening. When you say, here's my pricing, and then shut up. Don't say a word, just be quiet. Because they're going to be dying to say something. And you make your statement and let it sit there. And they want to fill in the blanks, fine. Otherwise, they're going to move on. And I've seen it time and time again. And I was in the software business, enterprise software business, and there were big numbers. I'm not doing those big numbers in photography, but for whatever it's worth.
I think that's valuable, Scott. So the idea that, you know, the rates we cut now are going to stick through on the other side of this. So
right.
Doing the best we can to try to hold, you know, to be reasonable, but hold firm with some sort of steak and lobster, as Hannah nicely put it.
Yes.
We see two questions in the chat group about dealing with jobs that have been finished but that haven't been paid. Sarah and Sully are both asking about jobs that they already shot, but that they haven't gotten paid for. And this again is an experiment. And Scott, I appreciated that input, but I think maybe for right now, if we can let Andrea, Hannah, and Joe keep giving us their thoughts. And if we have additional thoughts, anyone maybe put them in the chat window for just right now. Again, we're just kind of improvising. But Andrea, Hannah, Scott, do you guys have any, I'm sorry, Joe, do you have any ideas about, Sully says, I'm dealing with jobs that have finished and delivered before the pandemic was announced. Now those clients are holding all payments until ... Those images
Ooh.
are now being used in advertising. Help, is anyone else dealing with non-payment? And how do we help the industry moving forward with the 30-day to 120-day payment issue?
I have a question on that. Do they change their amount of days they are going to pay you after this happens?
No, basically, and it's a fairly large advertising job, and they basically it's a big corporation, and they basically just halted all payments.
They can't do that.
Yeah, I know, and the same with other companies. There's two more fashion brands, and they're just like, we can't send payments out right now because no one's going in the offices, etc. So
I agree with Hannah. Yeah, go Hannah. I agree.
I was just putting in the chat that you need to get a lawyer involved. That is, they're
Yeah.
absolutely taking advantage of the epidemic, and they signed that PO before. They should have the cash on hand. Their responsibility as a business to fulfill on agreements that were signed prior to.
And
Yeah,
Neil just made a good point about that. They're using, what they pay you for is your usage. Are they using these images?
oh yeah, I've taken screenshots of images being used.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, I have my advances, 50% deposits.
Still, that's not it.
They're just like, hey,
They're using your images illegally. So you deal with that. And if you want to email me later, you can at Stern Rep.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah. And then a lawyer is another option.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sully, one thing I want to clarify. So you said that you got the 50% advance. So is it the remaining 50% of expenses that they're not paying, and they've just changed the net of that invoice?
I mean, basically what I just did was a 50% of the entire budget beforehand. And then that's just how we've done. And they're one of my best clients too, which is really unfortunate. We shoot with them probably, 4 to 8 times a year. And so yeah, it's really very interesting territory for me because of the relationships I have with them and the sort of, the issues with non-payment now. And they're just like, there's no answer. There's just like, when we hear from higher ups, we'll be able to pay you. And that's it.
I feel like this is another one of those trends that has been going on for a while that is being accelerated by this. I mean, I was waiting from a job from September to get paid even from a big company before this thing even happened. And it's like, this seems like it's been a constant battle, but I sort of, second what everyone says about, like, it feels like in these situations, sometimes the squeaky wheel kind of ends up, there's probably a few people that they're doing this to. And if you just kind of keep raising your hand and there's a letter from a lawyer, you're more likely to rise to the top of the pile of like, oh, Sully's going to actually be a problem if we don't just take care of this, and they'll just get it off their plate, hopefully. And people are putting some nice resources into the chat room about lawyers. So recommend people looking there for other options, but that's a sticky one, man. We hope that you get paid.
Yeah, same. And it's, I basically, the way I've always, because I grew up assisting, I'll try to keep this short, not take up too much time, but when I was assisting, it was a constant issue for me. And I worked never from Joe. Joe always paid on time. I love it. But there were several, I was assisting all over the country, and so many different photographers it just got, they're always waiting for their cash flow, and it just always trickled down. And I've, since I've started shooting on my own, I've made it a priority to never let that happen. Even if it's my own cash, it's just how I can't sleep at night dealing with that. And, I think with this amount of people in the room, being able to help change that in the future. I mean, even my own directing partner, Adam, is like 30 days. And I'm like, 30 days is bullshit. Like, you don't, that's, we need to change that. And how do we help that? Because there's so many people down the entire totem pole that have to deal with that besides each and every person. And it's just, I don't really have a lot of answers to it, and other than just sending an email like, hey, I gave you the shit, pay. It's time to pay.
Can I just say also, as somebody who a lot of my jobs, especially in the editorial realm, come through my billing. So I'm paying out a lot of vendors and gear. A lot of people use producers, and someone like Hannah would have to, pay those vendors on time, regardless of the client's schedule, which is always slower than we expect to pay our crew. But I think one of the things that I've noticed is communication goes a long way. If you can't pay somebody for whatever the reason is, don't wait for them to reach out to you asking when that check is coming. The human and a reasonable and ethical thing to do is see it coming as a business person and say, you know what, I better reach out to that grip house. They're a small business and they've always looked after me and they always delivered everything the way I wanted. I better reach out to them and say, look, I'm waiting for a payment. Hopefully that comes the next week, or I'm getting funding. I'm opening a line of credit with my bank who I have a great relationship with, which also, as a small business person, that is an option. If you want to take care of the people that always look after you, you might just say, I just need a line of credit for 3 to 6 months just to pay humans, just to pay the people in my life who are relying on me. Just that conversation, outreach, and saying I'm thinking about you goes a long way and can alleviate a lot of pain.
I think we can also kind of lead by example. And Joe, I know you do this. Sully, it's great to hear that you do this. We always do this. And I think probably, Joe, we were trained by, it was Art Streiber who told me early on, you don't need a camera or a grip truck with this kind of gear. You need some money in the bank to be able to pay your crew for this job while you're waiting for that check to come in. And when the next job happens, you need to be paying people out of the money you already have when you're producing a job to the best of your ability, not waiting for that money to come in, because it's just not fair to people. And we try to pay on a 1 week turnaround. And I think that if we can all just think of that as the standard, it would really help a lot of people out moving forward. And I know it's not always easy, and it's especially not going to be easy in this current time, in this current crisis, but if that can just kind of be our general rule, then I think that it would make it a lot easier to kind of navigate the beginning of this business for sure. Thank you guys.
One more thing. Sorry,
yeah,
one more
Hannah,
thing
go for
to
it.
add to that is that making sure that, and this is obviously for things in the future, not the past, but that you're having those conversations with your clients before the job starts. One of the best investments I made was in this general outside counsel program that I put in the chat, because the lawyers now read every contract before I sign anything. I don't care if it's for a rental car, a gear rental, or a master service agreement with an agency. And they are able to negotiate those terms so that we have it in writing, signed by both parties. I do the same thing with my crew and vendors. And so if you've not had that conversation and it was just a verbal conversation and nothing's in writing, then it's a really sticky spot to be able to hold a client to paying in net 30 or 60 or whatever it is that you agreed to if it's not in writing before the project.
That's great. There's another question in the chat room that I think is really interesting and a little bit thorny, and something we've thought about also. It comes from Justine Feng, and she says, as a makeup artist, my job relies on face-to-face interaction. Do you have suggestions or resources on creative solutions to go about still pursuing beauty editorial related jobs in this climate? I know that beauty makeup, quote unquote, can seem like a skill set that isn't relevant right now, but I'm wondering if there's a way for me to continue pursuing this in a way that isn't tone deaf. And just, I just want to commiserate for a second of how sticky this is, because when we were thinking about how we could potentially start shooting again, getting productions up again, one thing we talked about was the close interaction. We can shoot socially distanced, except for glam, styling, hair, makeup, beauty, and that's going to be a really thorny thing. One thing we talked about was having a sort of beauty consultant there, but having talent doing their own makeup, but these are just like our very first thoughts about this. And I think that this is, you know, I was on set up until Friday of 2 weeks ago, right before a lot of these jobs started canceling. And you really saw that there was a real concern with the hair, makeup, and wardrobe. They were the first people wearing masks and gloves because they really understood how close a proximity they were to people. So I don't know, Joe, Andrea, Hannah, do you guys have any thoughts about makeup artists and stylists in this next sort of phase 2 chapter?
I mean, I think it's part of us kind of talking it out with what everyone's comfortable with, and also we're in early days. I mean, you know, the climate and it changes day by day, and you know, if you cut to 2 months from now, we'll have a lot better. I think fear is taking over right now, and we'll have a lot better scientific data to say, you know, if you're proven to be healthy, you're, you know, allowed to be close to other people. I mean, you can extrapolate into all the industries that require close contact, and they're going to need to find a way forward. So I think it's just a matter of keeping those conversations going and coming up with a bit of a new approach. Photo shoots will need hair and makeup. That will come back. It's just a matter of when and how and what feels safe. And like you said, you know, just making sure that you are thinking about it and you're telling your clients and everybody else, we've thought of that. We actually asked experts and this is what they say. Instead of, I don't think there's going to be a lot of winging it for the future,
Yep.
you know, foreseeable future. A lot of people will have to have solid resources to sort of to stand on to say, no, this is actually a great way forward. This is how we've solved it.
And Hannah, I'm remembering something you said yesterday. I mean, those are great points, Joe. And it reminds me of something that Hannah said when we were speaking earlier about, like, there's going to be new line items on estimates that clients haven't seen before for disinfecting locations and for a beauty consultant that wasn't, you know, now I'm just making that up. But
set medic that the movie industry has. You know.
A set medic, a medical consultant, like we might start seeing new line items. Yeah, Hannah, that was your thought. So if you want to say any more about that.
So I actually have 2 different thoughts. I want to make sure to address them separately, but together as well. So new line items, yes, we're absolutely going to see set medics, but we also have to be aware that those frontline medical professionals are not going to be available for advertising for a while. But I think that's going to be the new norm on still productions as it has been in broadcast for a long time. Also having professional teams come to disinfect spaces before and post production. So cleaning crews ×2 are going to be new expenses that we'll see on set. But something even specifically to the hair and makeup question, and I see in the chat about models and actors and talent, Wayne, and I know we have Megan Lewis and Mara Lynn. They're both a talent. If you guys have thoughts, drop that in the chat. But I had a conversation with Chris Chrisman earlier this week, and he is absolutely pioneering about virtual production. And he and I were talking about how we can do shoots with literally no people on site, that it would be just the talent and technology, and then all of the experts still playing a very active role, still hiring hair and makeup and wardrobe and lighting techs and assistants, but to do it virtually and remotely. And hair and makeup, the idea that we really talked about was having to cast for people that have the ability to do their makeup well. So the casting specs would say, come as if you were to do your own makeup, and then building in a line item for the hair and makeup artist to do tutorials prior to the shoot, so that they are virtually training them. Okay, this is how you do it for camera. This is maybe the aesthetic that we're looking for. Obviously, high fashion is out of the question, but if we're talking lifestyle, sports, portraits, things of that nature, I think it's a really interesting option to pivot that we can still create content in a safe way.
I saw that article on a photo editor about Chris's virtual shooting. I'm interested to learn more. It's obviously a very serendipitous time to have been putting something like that together. We've obviously been all, I think, scrambling to figure out how we can shoot if our clients can't travel, and how we could do live streaming of shoots. And it was something we were already looking into for the shoot in South Africa, because a client wasn't going to be able to come. So one more thing in the chat, and Justine, I hope that answers your question somewhat. I know that that's not obviously ideal, that talent would just be doing their own hair and makeup, but I do think the tutorials and sort of online, and, you know, there's some other avenues to potentially explore also, but that might be one of those things. And maybe it's only, to Joe's point, it's changing quickly, and maybe that's only for, maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe we are just, you wear gloves and a mask and you try to be really conscious about that, and people have disclosed their previous exposure, and it's a question for you if you feel comfortable doing that. Maybe it's something that shoots don't come back in general until, doing hair and makeup is just as sort of risky as being a photographer or a photo assistant. I guess we don't really know yet, but it's a really valuable sort of question. Something in,
Sorry,
oh,
this is Justine.
hey, Justine.
Hi.
Oh yeah, there you are.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really didn't consider like beauty consulting as like something I'd be able to do, but I think that's like a really interesting solution. I'm in makeup school right now, and it's kind of halted at the moment because I went to school trying to learn more about film and TV makeup specifically. And there are certain things that like we take a lot of precaution in sanitation and just being clean about our station and everything, but there's certain things in like film and TV, like special effects makeup and stuff, that isn't necessarily like something we're able to teach.
Yeah.
But like basic film, TV, like presence kind of makeup, like I think that's possible. But yeah, just I feel like I'm just in this weird limbo right now. And I think like other people, like other stylists and hair artists and stuff, I think they're kind of in the same boat as well, where we're kind of like, we don't really know what we can do at the moment.
All right there with you. One suggestion, and I mean this half flippantly and half not flippantly, is I feel like consulting for people how they look on Zoom might be like an actual growth industry over the next few months. Like if you just do a quick Zoom tutorial for makeup, I probably could use a little powder or something. Something in the chat room I wanted to, thank you, Justine. Something I wanted to say from the chat room is Simon said, hey, I'll have Art Stryber listening via audio from my feed. He wanted to share a PSA to be aware of inquiries from unreliable sources that seem too good to be true. People are looking to steal content and to double check everywhere where the inquiries are coming from. And then Scott said he just got one of those recently. So I feel like that's a good PSA just to put out there, that there probably are some parasitic people trying to take advantage of us as a group of people that are, anxious and looking for opportunities and maybe a little bit more willing to believe some things that our gut says are too good to be true. So thank you for the PSA, Art, and thanks for listening via audio feed from someone else's feed. I know a lot of people couldn't get into the call. Was there any other, Adam, any people interested in being more politically active right now? In my opinion, this whole situation has brought to light how gig workers, self-employed people need more safety nets, et cetera. Is there a way we can activate this group to approach our mayors, governors, senators, et cetera, to fight for Medicare for all, et cetera? Adam, thanks for that. I know that you're very politically active. I want to make sure that this doesn't turn into sort of move into a political conversation that makes anyone uncomfortable, but I would say that this, for me, has revealed our industry as being one of the more unorganized industries. Just to share this, because I have been spending a lot of time in the past few days, because it was really unclear whether the federal stimulus package was going to include 1099 workers or whether we were just going to fall through the cracks. And I was really looking hard for some sort of central organization that was advocating for 1099 gig workers and freelancers. And I really couldn't find one. Freelancers Union is an interesting organization, and they were petitioning in New York specifically, Governor Cuomo. There was a lot of change.org applications, but they were like for specific industries, restaurant workers and beauty salons. And it was really hard to find anything that was more holistic. And I did see in other countries, Norway is paying 80% of their self-employed people's incomes after 17 days of not working, which is incredible. The UK had a big petition that went pretty viral that they were trying to ask for the same thing. I don't know what the status is of that. And it did really get revealed to me that we are an unorganized group of really creative people. So I sort of second the thought that if people have ideas for organization for creative freelancers, I think that this is a good time that we're all kind of feeling the fact that we're disconnected like that. And we would love to sort of help push out that message in general. So if people have ideas for that, I would love to sort of connect additionally. There's, and then there's spirals into all of the other sort of housing crisis stuff that's going to come from this, and et cetera, et cetera. But Adam, I do appreciate the question. I don't know, Joe, Andrea, Hannah, do you guys have any other thoughts about sort of more solidarity in the creative freelance world, and if you see any potential for that?
I can speak for Chicago. We did have, just via email, a couple of threads going about letters to political figures, to our governor, representatives, and such. So I feel like we did actually have a good amount of solidarity, but it was very unofficial. And it just started by one person starting an email and people being added to that and sending updates. So I think that there is absolutely the potential for anybody on this call to be the one that starts that in their city.
And I think that that's probably true. That's also what the head of the Freelancers Union said, is he said this really becomes a local issue in a lot of ways, you know, local and state levels, and that there's a real way to have some impact there. But if there are any sort of more national campaigns, if anyone knows of any of those, we've been looking around and really haven't seen that many. So if anyone sees any that are really, you know, that we can put our voices behind, let us know. It was interesting to read that the reason, according to the media report that I read, that that gig workers got included in the federal bailout stimulus was because the CEO of Uber started advocating for it, because, you know, they've classified all of their drivers as 1099 gig workers, and not, it really wasn't to save the creative freelancers and the artists and the entertainers. It was to make Uber's life easier and make them less liable for some of this chaos that's going on right now. So it was sort of like inspiring to see that we got that 1099 workers got included in that federal stimulus, and then it was sort of disappointing to realize that it was just to kind of bail out Uber, or at least that was my personal take on it. Is there, I'm just trying to kind of scan the questions down here. Someone says Rob Haggart has a good collection of photographers he's in contact with. I agree, a photo editor, Rob Haggart, is a great resource to always check in with. Photographers associations, NPPA, ASMP, APA have been active doing political lobbying on our behalf, like on AB5. So yeah, I mean, as we see that kind of stuff, please, let's keep sharing them, and Art of Freelance is willing to share that too. Gioia, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, is a Freelancers Union really only in New York? They're a national organization, but their advocacy was only for New York. They wrote a letter to Governor Cuomo. Is there, oh, Maceo asked if we talked about not paying rent or not paying, have we talked about not paying rent or not paying rent? Two great options. We did, Maceo, at the beginning of the call, mention that there's a resources blog that we put together on the Art of Freelance blog, and it does talk about sort of how you can have those conversations with your credit card companies and your utility folks. And I think that rent is very similar. If you just kind of give your landlords a heads up, if you don't think you're going to be able to pay your rent, it's going to help this sort of chaos of the cascading, people not being able to pay their rent and then landlords not being able to pay their mortgage. And there is some rent relief, I believe, in the federal stimulus package too, that's a little bit unclear. So I hope that that's helpful. Well, I don't know, is there any last questions, or was this helpful for people? We appreciate everybody sticking around so much longer than we had planned. We can leave this room open for a little bit too, and the chat group, and it's really inspiring to see people come together. And, you know, to Joe's point from earlier, community really does feel like the, I don't know, a little bit of salve on this wound right here. So we appreciate you guys all being a part of this community. That's all I've got. Anyone else?
Thank you so much, Matthew.
It was a pleasure. Thank you guys for being a part of it. And yeah, we'll leave this room open for a few minutes. And if you guys want to unmute, or if Andrea, Hannah, Joe, you guys want to say any last words, thank you three again for being a part of this and sharing such thoughts. This also took prep work and, you know, reading all those questions. And I appreciate you guys putting the time and energy into it. So thank you guys again for sharing those thoughts.
Thanks, Matthew, for putting this together.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, a true pleasure. Thank you for organizing.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm gonna welcome to, if you want to drop off, you're welcome to. If you want to keep this chat going, you're welcome to. And thanks, guys.